Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of the 3-part live training where I am trying to help you to reignite your financial future. And we are trying to get you to a place where you feel confident and comfortable moving with your finances and doing what you need to do to make sure that you are in a good financial place. We want you to feel like wherever you're at with your finances, that you have some control, that you know what's going on with your finances, you're clear on the things that need to happen, you are intentional with some of the you are intentional with the actions that you're taking, and you're focused on the things that matter most. And then finally, you are accountable in the ways that you need to be accountable. So you are making sure that you are getting the help that you need, or you're at least holding yourself accountable to the things that you desire to do. All right. So when we are talking, what we are going to talk about today is that we are going to discuss the 3 steps of budgeting, the 3 major steps of budgeting. Now, a lot of times I'm told that people don't like the word budgeting. And so you may, if you're watching this, or if you are live, or if you're watching the replay, you may have just like, oh, nope, not mine, not for me. You may have already tuned off. And if that's you, oh well. But I'm going to tell you that there's a way to do budgeting that really does work, and it brings you to the place that it really does give you the confidence that you need when it comes to your finances. It's one of the most important pieces, one of the foundations of a good financial plan is knowing where your money is going and being able to plan forward with that money. So why are we talking about this budgeting? Well, I told you that I was going to be, and I'm just getting, sorry, I'm grabbing one thing here that I was looking for, and just one second. Oh, there it is. All right. Well, I told you that we were going to do something that was very practical on Tuesday. And so this is probably one of the most practical things that I can do, is at least on a live setting like this. If we were sitting down together one-on-one, there's lots of other things, of course, that we could do. But this is more of we've got a live setting here. How can I kind of give you something that you can use right away? Well, how can I give you something that is going to change the way that you manage your money, that may fix, or you may see some immediate wins from it? And I'm going to tell you that budgeting is key to your financial freedom, to your financial peace, to your budgeting, or to your situation of getting from one place to another place. And when I say getting from one place to another place, I'm talking about potential purpose, right? Potential to purpose. That was one of the themes of this live training, of going from the place that you are now, that potential that you have, and getting to a place of purpose where you know exactly what you are doing, where you're going, and you're clear on the steps to get there. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to connect those two. Well, if we take potential to purpose and we apply it to your money, we need to give potential to the dollars that you are earning. So if you're earning, let's say, $5,000 a month, $5,000 should be allocated towards a particular purpose. We need to give that money purpose. We need to take that, as the money guy would say, take that army of dollar bills and put it to good use, move it in the right direction. And so how do we do that? Well, one of the first things you need to do is you need to send your money, or tell your money what to do. This is give every dollar a job, or a job description. And so what does that mean? That means budgeting. That means you're going to plan out your expenses. That means you're going to track and categorize. And that means you're going to reconcile the money at the end of the month. Okay, so I just named the 3 steps. Let's go over those again, and we're going to break them down a little bit further for you so you can actually put this to good use. And this is going to be more valuable for you. So again, step number 1 is plan out all of your expenses for the month. Step number 1, plan out all of your expenses for the month. Okay, so that means that you are going to, when you're going to think about your month. Okay, so just, in fact, I'm going to encourage you right now to pull out a piece of paper and write down some of the big expenses that come up in a particular month for you. So pull out a piece of paper and write down some of your big expenses. Now, planning, in all the clients that I've worked with, lots of people do the initial components of this step. Lots of people will say, oh yeah, so I'm going to probably, these are my bills. And they'll plan out their bills because they know that they're regular. But then when it comes to the groceries, well, I don't know how much I'm going to spend on groceries this month. It could change. How about the gas? Well, gas prices are going up. I really don't know. Well, can't you estimate? Can't you have some idea based on past months' performance? You need to at least get some idea of where the money get some kind of plan in place. So the first step to budgeting is we need to give every dollar a job description. All right. So let's kind of keep looking at we're going to keep focusing on this plan component. So, all right, Josiah, I've got my expenses, or I've got some things planned out here now. So now what do I do? All right, let's go ahead and estimate some of the things. So make sure you have estimates on there for like groceries and gas and some of your other expenses that maybe are not regular. Maybe you need to have some fun money in there. You need to plan for the unexpected, and you need to plan for things that you're probably going to do. Okay. One of the things that we're going to talk a lot more about in the next training on Thursday is awareness. And one of the reasons why we are so focused on this budget, on the plan, is that you need to know where your money is going. So when you're planning things out here, you might have a temptation to, well, I don't really know, you're going to have those, but you're also going to say, like, I think that I'm going to spend maybe this much on out to eat, but I'm going to get really good this month, and I'm not going to spend any money out to eat. I'm going to stop spending altogether. No, I know I've been shopping for clothes and shoes, and I spent $3,000 over the last year. But you know what? Over the next 6 months, I'm not spending any money on clothes and shoes. Good luck. That's probably not going to work. If you don't plan it out, if you're not if you're not being realistic, I should say, if you're not being realistic with your own expectations of yourself, you're going to fall flat. And I wish that wasn't the case. I'd like to give you some platitudes and say, oh, I'm with you. Let's do it. No eating out for the next 6 months. No eating out this month. It's going to be really hard. It's very unlikely you're going to stick with it if you haven't already proven to yourself that it's possible. And if you haven't already taken the small steps to get there. What you will find is that numbers are not all about the numbers. Finance is not all about the numbers. We do have to consider the emotions that are involved. We have to consider the emotions. We have to consider the behaviors. We have to consider our mindset. We have to consider all of these these non-rational components when we're thinking about our money and our finances, not just the numbers. Because you're going to have a bad day sometime this month. You're going to not want to cook sometime this month, or you're going to be tired coming home from work, or your kids are going to be driving you crazy asking for McDonald's, or you're going to have a weekend where you're like, hey, we did such a good job this week. We've got to reward ourselves, or I deserve to go to Chevy's tonight. Whatever you decide when it comes to your eating out or your habits, you can't change them. Just like anything else in life, you can't just change them with a flip of a switch. Most people can't. Some people maybe can, but very few of us can. And the reason why is because we're human, and we need to recognize that humanness, and we need to get real with the situation that we're in. So if you've been spending $500 a month, you can't plan for zero. You can't even plan, you shouldn't even plan probably for 100. If you want to try to be better about it, you can maybe drop that 500 to 400. Or you could drop it to maybe 300 at the most. But you really, if you do more than that, what's going to be very likely is that you're going to go over your budget, and you're going to be like, see, Josiah, it doesn't work. I told you. Budgeting doesn't work for me. Well, you didn't try it long enough and you didn't follow my advice, right? You need to do what I'm telling you here. You've got to make sure that you are planning out a realistic budget. That means your first budget should be exactly what you already spent, or what you spent last month, or what you already spent this month. It should be matching your typical habits. Well, Josiah, this last month was unusual. And so this month's going to be different. Okay, there's some, that's a fair statement, and maybe that's the case. But what I often find is that the unusual month, when you really look at all your past months, you start to realize, wow, every month was unusual in some way. It may not have been the same expenses, but every month was unusual in some way. Last month, we had maybe an Amazon subscription come out. The previous month, we had to replace a flat tire. The previous month, we had Christmas. The previous month, we had Thanksgiving dinner and family coming over. We had to pay for a party. The previous month, so we bought pumpkins and went to the Harvest Festival, and we did a Halloween haunted house. You see how all of these things that are, this is only in the month of October that Halloween comes. Only in the month of November do we see Thanksgiving dinners. Only in the month of December do we see Christmas. Only in the month of January do we see all of the new journals and apps that you bought to get better at the new year. So you're going to have unexpected expenses almost every month out of the year, if you're going to call them unexpected. But planning means you need to plan for the unexpected as well. That means that if you are trying to plan out your budget, plan out all of your expenses, you should be considering what you're actually spending. So that brings us to step 2. And then we're going to go back and just hit step 1 maybe one more time. But we're going to let's hit that again. Step 2. Okay? The step 2 is track and categorize. And so what you need to do here is you need to actually look at your bank account. You need to look at all your transactions, and you need to see what you actually spent. This is the easiest way to do this is not to actually go look at your bank account balance. It's not to print out, it's not to put it all into a spreadsheet, and it's not to print out your transactions. The easiest way to do this for most people is to download an app. Which app? Whatever app is going to work best for you. But I would say EveryDollar is my favorite. YNAB is another option. A little bit more complicated, another step involved, but more functionality. And Mint, a lot of people like Mint, although I do not like Mint because I don't feel like it's intentional enough. It's very reactive, but that's my opinion. And there's a few others. I've heard people talk about Rocket Money, Pocket Guard. There's even a lot of banks will actually have their own app that will do it. So there's a possibility that you don't even need to download a separate app because your bank already has the functionality, a budget functionality built in. Either way, you need to track your expenses, and you need to do it in a way that's going to be doable for you, that you're actually going to do on a regular basis. Because, believe it or not, I'm going to ask you to plan out your expenses and track and categorize them and reconcile them. The third step, every month. I'm asking you to do it every month. Well, that's impossible, Josiah. How could you expect me to do that every month? Because I'm going to say that again because it looks like I might have froze up for a second there. But that's impossible, Josiah. How could you expect me to do that every month? Because when you are being intentional with your money, when you're trying to go from potential to purpose and you want your money, you want to give your money potential, or you want to take your money's potential and give it purpose, you need to do that on a regular basis. How often are you paid? You're paid at least monthly, if not more than that. Well, then why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I maybe budget every week? You can if you want. YNAB is particularly good at that, being able to do weekly or bi-weekly. But if you really want to get good, or the reason why I tend to recommend monthly is because one week to week, it becomes more overwhelming because you're having to do it more often. And weeks can change. One week you might buy a little bit more groceries than another week, but within a month, your grocery budget is probably going to be pretty similar to the last month's budget. So overall, the month averages it out a little bit better. And when you think about some of your bills, a lot of your bills are probably going to be monthly. So it just makes sense to do it monthly for most people, I think. All right, so if we're doing a monthly budget, every month we're doing the plan like we talked about. And then every month we're doing the tracking and categorizing. Okay, yeah. So Josiah, I get it. You've been talking about tracking. I get it. I need to track my money. But now what do I do with that tracked? Or what do I, so I have a list of all my transactions. Now what do I do? You need to categorize. That's the next part of that. So track and categorize. Categorize means you are going to take all of these transactions, you're going to put them into different buckets. So, got a little prop here for you. Got two buckets for you. Bucket one is out to eat. Bucket two, is gas. Out to eat, gas. All right. So, we're going to put some money. We think, okay, out to eat. You know what? We're going to follow your advice, Josiah. We're going to put $100 out to eat because we've been spending more like 200, but we're going to really work on it. Try to get down to 100. Okay, so each one of these, no, let's say we're going to do 400 because each one of these paper clips is going to be $100. Okay, so we've got 200 here. All right, here's 300. Here's 400. All right, and we think we're going to spend about 300 in gas this month based on looking at our trips planned or looking at how much we have to drive for work or take the kids to school or whatever. Spend about $300 in gas. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so we've got $400 for groceries and we've got $300 for gas. We just categorized our expenses. So what are we going to do with that? Now that we've categorized the expenses, now we know how much we're actually spending. Okay, so that was my plan actually of how much I was going to plan. But until you actually spend it, until you actually spend the money, then it's just a plan. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean a lot, right? You need to actually spend money, track what you actually spent, and that is when you know how much you're really needing to adjust the plan, which is step 3. So we're categorizing all the expenses. One of the things to consider when you're trying to categorize expenses is, where do I put like things like that are kind of, I'm not really sure where they go. Like when I buy a phone screen protector, where does that go? Under miscellaneous, under technology, under phone bill, under fund money. So what I'm going to say is you can choose whatever category you want. It needs to make sense to you. Every person, all of you think different when it comes to your money. Some things make more sense than others. In general, there's going to be some pretty wide-ranging groups that you can use. Like transportation would be gas, oil, um, would be perhaps auto insurance, would be any maintenance that you do on your car. So you've got your transportation, or it could even be tolls, it could be parking fees, it could be Uber or Lyft, or some other ride-sharing service. Whatever the case may be, you're going to have like a transportation group, and underneath this transportation, you've got all these different categories for car. And then you could do the same thing for other big categories like home. You can or you could put utilities under a whole group and then do all your utilities under that, or you could put utilities in general under your home. So however you want to categorize it, whatever makes sense to you, do it that way. But you've got to choose categories. So we choose all these categories. We plan out what we're planning to spend for each of those, and we start dropping money into those different buckets. We take the transaction, and in every dollar, you can drag and drop them into the right categories. YNAB will do it automatically, but you got to go back and fix it. Some other programs will do it differently. Mint will do it automatically, but you got to go back and fix it. Every dollar will bring it in automatically, but you got to drag and drop them into the right categories. And so there's different apps will handle it differently, but every app, no matter what app you use, you've got to do that. You've got to make sure that you are tracking your expenses. Now, what's interesting is some people will track their expenses and they won't really plan out for the next month. So they'll be reactive. Oh man, how did we spend $500 out to eat? And then they're like, we're going to stop doing that. Next month, we're going to spend less. But they don't give it a specific plan, and they don't actually refer back to that plan. And they end up by the end of that second month still spending $500 a month, or finding other expenses that have now taken the place of the out to eat that they didn't spend, perhaps. Okay? So you've got to make sure that you are planning out all those expenses, and then you need to track where the money's actually going. Once you track the money, then you're going to find that sometimes all of your best well-laid plans, they're not working out like you planned. So you need to have a plan B and even a plan C. So what's the plan B? Plan B is, okay, well, now you are halfway through the month, let's say, and you realize, uh-oh, we just went over on our out to eat budget. We're halfway through the month. Aunt Bertha's coming into town next week. We're going to have to take her out. That's $50. We need to find that $50. Plus, we've got Johnny's birthday coming up at the end of the month, and we promised him we were going to take him out. So that's another $50 for the family. So, all right, we got $50 times 2. That's $100 that we're going to be over budget. We are halfway through the month. We're not in crisis mode yet because you planned it. You're looking at it. You're realizing, we better plan ahead. So we're going to take the money that was in that out to eat budget. We don't have any left in there, but we do. We just realized gas prices actually went down a little bit. We didn't have to spend as much in gas as we had expected. We've got $100 left in that bucket that's not used. So we're going to take $100 out of the gas budget, and we're going to drop it into the out to eat budget. And now the out to eat budget is $500. Oh man, but Josiah, you're telling me I got to plan $500 now for my out to eat? Did you spend it? If you spent it, you planned it. Okay? Spending, planning, you need to make sure they match. If you ended up spending, you may not have planned it in advance, but you did plan it, even if it was spur of the moment planning. You still plan to do it, right? If I decide to sit down right now and I sit down, let's say that then I planned at some point in the last millisecond to sit down. So I need to make sure that I actually follow my plan. So if you are struggling with budgeting, one of the very likely reasons for that is you are not reallocating money. You are not moving money from one bucket into another bucket. And you're not actually figuring out then where your money's actually going. You are seeing numbers going negative, but you're not fixing it. And so you're not getting clear on what needs to happen to change that for next month. So that third step is something that a lot of people miss, but it's really important. Reconcile and adjust. Reconcile the numbers, make them all match. So what do I mean by make them all match? If you spent 500, you need to put in the plan section 500. If you spent 352, then put in the plan 352. Adjust the number. If that means that you are negative for the month, you now know that you're going further into savings or further into debt. If you have extra money after you've done all this reconciling where everything matches, and you find that you've got a little extra money that wasn't allocated to anything, guess what? Now you have margin. You have the ability to take that extra money and put it towards the things that you care about. What are the things you care about? I'm assuming you care about debt, paying off debt in some way. I'm assuming you care about lifestyle. You probably want to put more money towards a trip or something. I'm assuming you care about giving, perhaps. I'm assuming you care about your goals, so like maybe your retirement. So you need to put the extra money towards that, but you don't know if you have any extra money if you're not budgeting properly. So that's why you need to make sure you're doing all three steps: plan, track, and adjust. If you are doing all three steps, you will find that it's not going to happen right away. Everything's not going to be perfect. You're not going to find that everything's suddenly peachy keen. You don't have to worry about it anymore. Your budget is the budget is just going to be perfect the next month. It is not going to be perfect. In fact, I can almost guarantee it's going to be messy for the first month or two or even 3. But if you are consistent with the process, if you actually do it, if you actually take the steps moving forward towards getting this budget in order, you will find some resolution to this. You will see some changes happening in your budget. You will start to feel confident. You will start to get a hang of it. It will start to feel natural by the 4th month or so. The 90 days in, and you're starting to feel much better about it. Now, once you're 90 days in, doesn't mean you're out of the woods. You need to keep moving forward. You got to stay accountable. Now that you've got your budget in order, there's a lot of other steps I'm assuming you're still wanting to accomplish, right? If you now finally have control over the basics of your budget, then you can now start to exert some control over where that money's going a little bit better. You can start to make better decisions about what you want. You can start to get more clear. You can start to get more aware. You already are more aware now, but you can start to understand. You can then start to gain awareness in other areas. So if you start to see that you're constantly spending out to eat, then you start to realize you become aware of some of the behaviors, and you start to be, and you get to it gives you the power to make decisions to change that behavior, because now that you're aware of it. And then same thing goes with the clarity. If you gain as you're gaining awareness of the budget, you're getting clear on what you want to plan in the budget, then you start to get to a point where it's like, okay, I know where I'm going, but now that I know where the money's going, and now that I'm starting to direct the money a little better, let's get clear on let's get more clear on the why here. Let's get more clear on those long-term goals. Now that we know that we can save $200 to $300 a month, let's start figuring out where we want to save that. Let's start to dream again. Let's start to think about what those long-term goals are. Now that we realize we're $500 negative every month, let's start to make some changes to our lifestyle. Let's start to get clear on what we really desire more than this gym membership, more than these other subscriptions that we've been paying for. Maybe we desire more than all of the activities that we're paying for. So you need to You can only make decisions based on facts, based on reality, based on the numbers that you have in front of you. So, what numbers do I have in front of me? You have your budget in front of you. That gives you the numbers. It gives you how it helps you to know exactly where you're at and what you need to do moving forward so that you can get to that consistent action and ultimately the financial wholeness that you desire. All right? Because once again, we want you to have financial wholeness. And tomorrow we're going to talk about the 7 stages that lead to financial wholeness. That would be the 7th stage. Not tomorrow, Thursday, or the next live if you're watching the replay, the next replay, day 3. So now we've got the 3 steps now. Okay, Josiah, I'll try this out. So how do I implement this practically? Well, depends on where you are in the month. We are at the time of this recording, at the time of this live, it is the middle of April. We are in April. It is April 18th. That means that we could go back to the beginning of April, collect all of the transactions, figure out what April looks like, and maybe put that into a budget if we want. And then we would start planning for May. So in the current state, I would actually, when you're first starting the budget, even though the 3 steps every month are plan, track, and categorize, and then reconcile, adjust. When you're first starting, you want to make sure that you're starting with real numbers. So you need to track and almost need to track and categorize first before you make that first plan. So we're in the middle of April. We're going to take all the April numbers. We're going to track them. We're going to put them into a spreadsheet or into an app, and we're going to categorize them according to whatever makes sense to us. Then you're going to plan your May budget based on the April numbers plus anything additional that you need to think about in May. So I think we have, is it Mother's Day in May? Sorry if I'm getting that wrong, but we've got if you have any holidays or you have any birthdays in May, you want to make sure you're planning ahead for that. So that means you are giving potential to every dollar that you have that's coming in May. You look at your income for May, you figure out exactly where you're going to put every dollar, and you plan it out. Now, this is not going to be easy, especially if your income is irregular. We can talk about Hills and Valleys Fund. We can talk about other sinking funds. We can talk about building margin, developing a buffer in your account. There's lots of other strategies and tactics that we can get into, but I don't want to overwhelm you today, because this is already, this one thing will change your financial future, just this one thing. And of course, in addition, if you add it to a bunch of other things that you're going to work on. But I want you to really just focus in. Just get this part down. Just get this part down. It's going to change. It's going to really change everything for you. Now, so we've got the budgeting part. So we've got the 3 steps. We're tracking all the money in April, and we're planning for May. Now, how often should I be doing all of this money work? So this is the suggested schedule based on the work that I've done with other clients. And I say other clients. Well, based on the work I've done with clients. So number 1, the first step, plan, should happen every month. You want to plan out your expenses every month. So that means that and that way you can start to kind of change things as needed for different things in the month. If you're coming up into spring and you're going to need to do pay for some yard work to be done or some sprinklers to be fixed, then you need to put that in the budget. I'm saying that because I'm looking out my window right now and seeing that it's spring. It's beautiful weather right now, and we've got a lot of the plants are growing, and we've got hedges growing, and I'm going to have to turn my sprinklers on pretty soon, and that's going to, I'm going to need to do some checking of that. I don't think I'm going to need to do any repairs on it, but I might, because I find that sprinklers break, right? Or they get misadjusted when you're not using them for a while. So important to plan out those kinds of things. So we're planning once a month. The second step, the track and categorize, you're doing that much more often. You should be doing that at least weekly. At least weekly. So what does that look like? That means you're taking a week, maybe on Friday or Saturday, you're looking at your whole week of expenses and you're putting them into the right categories. You should be doing that at least weekly. Some people feel like in order to develop the habit, they need to do it every day. And I have clients who do that. Well, and why might you need to do that? Well, think about James Clear has said that it takes 66 days to build a new habit. If it takes 66 days to build a new habit and you're only budgeting once every week, it's going to take you over a year to build that habit if that's correct. So we don't want to take that long. I don't think it's necessarily 66 days. I think that some of those days in between still count. I mean, even though it's not consecutive, I think that you're going to be okay, even though you're not working every day necessarily on the finances. Like I've already said, I think the rule is generally 3 to 4 months is how long it takes to get good at the budget. But if you still want to be developing habits, and so you need to work on that second step as often as necessary to make sure you're consistent with it. However many times that you need to make sure that you are doing that, you need to do it. However many times it takes for you, or however often it takes for you to make sure that you're staying consistent with that process, that's how often you need to do it. Okay? And step number 3, you should be doing that at least twice per month. So step 3, the reconcile, the adjust. I gave you the example of halfway through the month, you figure out that you don't have enough money in the out to eat budget, and so you pull some of it from gas. You're not going to do that every week necessarily. You could, but you don't need to. You should at least do it though in the middle of the month, because you're going to find some changes need to be made. You're going to remember expenses that you didn't plan. I took my car in, or I'm sorry, I did take my car in for an oil change, but we planned that. But my wife's car just recently, last couple days, the brakes started grinding, which it should have given a squeak, but one of the pads was unfortunately a lot lower and didn't have the little squeak indicator on it. So anyway, my wife's brakes needed to be replaced on the rear wheels on her car, and so we didn't plan that. So we didn't want to spend $300 or $400 unplanned this month. And I happen to know how to work on cars, happen to be pretty good at it. So in the easier stuff. So I went ahead and I changed the brakes this morning. And so that still cost us though money that wasn't in our budget. So we had to pull from other places. So in this case, it was very cheap because I did it myself, $52 for the brakes, and then $14 for a socket that I had to buy. And that's it. So, and versus $300 or $400. So we saved a few $100s just by me doing that. But the point is, we were able to make that decision that I was going to do that because we're halfway through the month. We look at the budget, we realize, we really don't want to put that $300, $400. We don't want to pull that out of other priorities. We have other priorities that we're focused on that we really want to put more money towards. So we didn't want to spend that much money on the car. So that's why we were able to make a very intentional decision that I was going to take a couple hours and I was going to fix the car myself. So that is one example of how you can be more intentional, and how being more aware of the numbers and being really doing this process, the 3 main steps of budgeting, how that can change or how that can make a difference when you're trying to make decisions, when you're trying to be more intentional, when you're trying to be more focused and prioritized on the things that matter most, when you are trying to develop some path towards that better financial future. You need to get this. This will help you in the process. All right. So there's the timeline. Plan once a month, adjust or track and categorize 4 times a month, or at least every week, and then adjust twice a month, middle of the month and end of the month. The end of the month adjustment should happen right before you plan for the next month. So at the end of April, you should be adjusting April and then using that April numbers to start planning for May. All right. Any questions? You can put them in the chat. Otherwise, I will go ahead and talk about a couple other things related to this. We really need to, I mentioned that it doesn't take that long after you've been doing this after you've been doing this a while. And I'm actually going to wrap up with this. Sometimes we think that we don't have time to budget. We don't have time to look at these numbers. It's tedious. It doesn't work. I'm going to tell you that it does work, and I hope that I've convinced you already in today's session that it does work. But I also want to let you know that budgeting, it doesn't take that much time if you do it right and you're doing this consistently. So I would say that most months I'm spending an hour to an hour and a half total for all of those steps I talked about. Planning usually takes around 30 minutes, okay, or less, because you're just using last month's budget's template. And if you're doing it budgeting right, you're also going to start building up some funds for future months. And so there are expenses that we have this month that we've already started saving for months ago that are in the budget. So there are things that you start to develop your system, and you get comfortable with that, and you begin to be able to, it doesn't take as much time because you're not starting from scratch. Starting from scratch, when you first start this process, it might take a little longer. It might take 2, 3, 4 hours. I mean, I don't know. Depends on how organized your finances are already. And it depends on how your bank, if you have to enter every transaction manually from your bank, that would take a lot longer, right? But your first time planning too, you got to adjust categories, you got to move groups around, you got to figure out how you want to categorize things, and you got to think about unexpected things. It's going to take you a little longer. But once you've gotten in, by the second, third month, it's only taking you in a couple hours at the most for the whole month. That means 15 minutes a week, plus an hour to plan, plus an hour to adjust, recategorize, or half hour to adjust and reallocate. And so that's a couple hours total, and you're on to the races to the next month. So is your financial peace and security worth 2 hours of your time? If it's not, then are your priorities going the right direction? A couple hours of your time to get your finances in order should not be too much of an ask. And if it is, then you probably need to really sit down and think about, why am I so scared of this? Why do I avoid the finances? Why don't I want to touch them or deal with them or look at them? It's very possible you're in a state of financial paralysis. It's very possible that you are in a state of financial adriftedness, or you are financially adrift, just kind of floating, not sure where you're going. It's very possible you are in a state of financial vagueness. You're vague. Everything is very unclear about your finances. It's very possible that you are in a place of, or a lack of financial, or you're lacking financial accountability, and so you've got inconsistency in your finances, or you're lacking intentionality. You're stuck. You're not making progress forward. It's very possible that you are financially unfocused or scattered. And I'm going to actually define each of those tomorrow. So those are the 7 stages. Those are 6 stages. The 7th stage is financial wholeness. So I'm going to define each of those in our next training. I am going to talk about what the path from potential to purpose looks like in your life and money. We've already talked about a little bit of that path of potential purpose in your money. I'm going to really connect that to your life and how that all fits together. Why you always need to start with awareness and clarity. as we've already kind of hit on this a few times, but we're going to really dig into that deep tomorrow or in the next training. We're going to talk about the power and intention, the power of intentionality and focus in your finances. We're going to talk about what accountability looks like in your finances, how you can hold yourself accountable, how you can develop incentives, how you can hold others accountable, or how let others be a part of your accountability system. And that can include a spouse, a partner. It can be a friend. It can be a coach, like myself. It can be someone at your church. But you need accountability. You need to hold yourself to a higher standard than where you're at now. And then we're going to talk. So we're going to talk about the stages to financial wholeness, and then lastly, we're going to talk about how to get support in the journey. Okay, and I'm going to share some resources with you that will help you with that. All right. So I hope you enjoyed today, the replay, the live. If you attended, I really want to help people with their finances. It's worked for me. It's working for my clients, and I know it will work for you too. So if you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out. I would really encourage you to make sure you join the next live training, and I look forward to seeing you there.